I just wanted to give you a little bit of my background. I work as a restoration ecologist out of Rhode Island and cover this area, so I'm the local guy that kind of deals more with salt marsh restoration, and so I use ecological engineering principles to do a lot of my work, and I also spend a lot of time working on dam work. So I have one perspective of how this type of work will or can occur, and some of the other folks that are part of our team here, they're the folks that actually cover more of the regulatory aspects, and so they're not here today, but some of the topics that Elaine is going to cover will bring some of this stuff up. And so Juliana had talked about the next workshops would include some of the concerns that Connecticut Deep has, relative to fisheries, oyster habitat. And it's really not much different than what our agency is also focused on. So you're going to get a flavor of a quick coverage today of what our interests are in this topic. And so I'm going to turn it over to Elaine and go from there. So thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Elaine Mahoney. I'm the NOAA's Mid-Atlantic Resilience Liaison. So I manage our Sandy Recovery Projects portfolio here in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. And what we've focused on with our Sandy funds is sponsoring living shorelines, collection of science and data, and green infrastructure pilot projects. And as Jim said, we're just going to give an overview of NOAA's perspective on living shorelines, both the regulatory and the management aspect. So we are funding projects in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, and living shoreline projects support our habitat conservation and resilience goals where they're constructed along shorelines that have active erosion rates. Projects have greater resilience to projected increases in sea level rise when they're constructed adjacent to areas with existing fringe marsh or restored marsh capable of migration. We are involved in projects through the Regional Office of Habitat Conservation and Restoration Center staff, have knowledge and technical expertise to assist in the development of these projects. And most in-water activities, including living shoreline projects, require permitting on the federal, state, and occasionally the local level. So where NOAA participates in that is we comment on the federal level permits. Federal action such as a permit issuance generally triggers the National Marine Fisheries Service consultation requirements. We try to encourage the use of living shoreline techniques to preserve and improve tidal habitat and the ecosystem services provided while sustaining connectivity between land and water. Living shorelines are not recommended by the agency as a way to control flooding and storm surge, although they will increase overall resilience. There's always the caveat that every site is unique and there may be reasons why a shoreline is not appropriate for stabilization and erosion control. And we like to recommend, as other presenters have mentioned, to always be locally specific in the design. We encourage shoreline protection practices that avoid or minimize seaward encroachment into subtidal areas, and those that minimize the use of hardened protective measures to protect against habitat trade-offs. So currently we have a headquarters group that's working on living shorelines guidance for the agency, and these are some of the ranges of living shoreline measures that we recommend. One of the ways that we support living shorelines is that on NOAA-supported properties such as the NEARS and other sites, we help develop living shorelines with our partners and use those as kind of pilot projects to develop science to share nationally. Currently, JC NEARS is partnering with NJDEP to develop construction and permitting standards for living shorelines. NEARS also did a webinar series from 2014 that some of you might be familiar with that had extensive resources on living shoreline practices. We also perform field inspections, attend meetings, public hearings, and provide data on the tides, currents, and sea level rise and science applications through Digital Coast, our sea level rise tool, and other applications. Our authority comes from the MSA, which is the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act. That is used to identify and describe essential fish habitat, and we consult on those species with the other major agencies in water permitting. So this is a list of the relevant EFH species for this area. So some of the regulations and things that we consider with essential fish habitat are we define waters to be any aquatic areas and their associated physical, chemical, and biological properties that are used by fish and historically used by fish. So in a lot of the contaminated areas that we have in the Northeast, even though there might not be existing strong species there, we look at the historic trends and not necessarily the present trends. And the adverse effect is defined by us as any impact that reduces the quality or the quantity of the fish habitat. And that can be direct, indirect, individual, cumulative, or synergistic impacts. Areas that we consider of particular concern are areas that provide important ecological functions and are very sensitive to human-induced degradation and maybe unique to the area in general. A good example of this that you guys are probably familiar with is eelgrass beds. In addition to EFH, other authorities that consider these types of issues are the Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act, National Environmental Policy Act, and Federal Power Act. So how does all this relate to living shorelines? In general, we provide a lot of support for softer living shorelines, and we recognize the value of wetlands as fishery forage, refuge, spawning, and nursery habitats for juvenile species. When sited properly, a shoreline can limit the amount of erosion and maximize the value of habitat restored in a way that a more engineered shoreline cannot. So when we're looking at habitat trade-offs and balancing, some of the considerations that we take into effect are existing habitat at the site. Is it a special aquatic site? Is it a protection area, shellfish, gravel, and cobble spawning area? What species are there now? What type of habitat is being proposed, and what are the functions and values of that? And will it actually increase the overall value of the area as a fishery habitat? Our habitat program focuses on the benefits, and although EFH is an important consideration, it's not necessarily a barrier and the only piece that we look at. There are ways that we can help make the process easier. Our fisheries habitat staff work with a lot of federal and state partners to streamline permits and provide consultations on scopes of work prior to the permitting applications. And we do that for nationwide permits, regional general permits, and statewide permits. So some examples of permits that have been developed to kind of fast-track living shoreline projects are regional general permits, which they've used in Virginia, state programmatic general permits, which have been successful in the Maryland and Baltimore district, and state general permits, which were just recently created in New Jersey, and there's several other states that are looking at considering general permits. So by providing early coordination, we help to kind of shepherd through the permitting process, and we're currently, with that headquarters group that I referenced, developing a document to assist entities interested in living shorelines and clarify our position on those types of activities with design guidelines and other types of guidance and resources. Our cross-line office strategies are to provide expertise and skills of our planning and regulatory staff, developing this guidance, which will be listed on a public-facing website in the next couple of months. Developing a website to house our resources in addition to the regulatory framework with a database and other information. And developing a NOAA facilities policy so that the living shorelines we put on our own properties will all meet similar standards. So a major project that we worked on with the Army Corps is SAGE, Systems Approach to Geomorphic Engineering. And this is a guideline that we developed in cooperation that recognizes essentially 9 different types of shoreline treatments and how they can achieve multiple goals through different engineering strategies ranging from soft to hard. And these are some photo examples of living shorelines that NOAA has been involved with in the region. Thank you.